Morning. Morning, Jürgen. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And good morning to everybody who's watching on YouTube as well. I'm going to acknowledge you and direct my attention there too. Hey, I want to talk to you today about something that is forged. And what I mean by that is that there's certain fruits of the Spirit that are things that happen when you become a Christian, and things that happen through just the Spirit living inside of you. You'll have more joy, for example. You'll be probably more thankful person. And your communication with God daily will strengthen everything that you do. It's just the way it is. It's kind of like, it's really by osmosis. It just happens. But there's some things that have to be forged. And one of those is faithfulness. So we're in a series, my last series here, unfortunately, at Canyon Creek Bible Fellowship, and the series is called Who Was Jesus? And one of the things that I wanted to dive into with this study is looking at things that, we've all studied the life and times of Jesus. The New Testament is one of the favorite things of any sort of preaching person to go through. But looking at some of these stories in the context of Jesus was modeling things for us. Sometimes Jesus tells us to do things, but more than not, through what he did and through how he lived, he was modeling how to live as people ourselves. And so using that lens, we're exploring something called faithfulness today. And we're going to be in Mark 13. So I'll let you turn there. We're going to be in Mark 13, starting on verse 32. And Jesus, with his faithfulness, he does something with his disciples with faithfulness where he calls out his disciples. So we're going to talk about when Jesus basically calls out his disciples and talks about who's going to betray him. He talks about, of course, Peter, who's kind of my spirit animal as a disciple, because Peter, he just is a fly-by-night, go with whatever's going on type of guy. And I believe he had a bad case of ADHD. I love the guy. I love Peter so much. And he was just essential in building the early church. But someone that was essential, I want to back up, someone that was essential to building my family, and I've talked about him probably at length until you're tired of him, was my grandpa. And the reason I want to talk to you about my grandpa again is because I was actually talking about him last night with Carrie Ann. I was going to go a different way with my illustration on faithfulness, but she asked me a couple questions last night as we were sitting. It was kind of, Jack had gone to bed, and we had started watching a TV show, kind of turned it off, and then we're talking. And my grandpa came up again, and so I began exploring some of those stories and that kind of thing, and all of a sudden realized that the guy just exuded faithfulness. And it's really you kind of notice faithfulness offhand, right? You're not going to look at someone and go, well, that's a very faithful person. But when you explore something, and we have the benefit now in the modern day of pictures, if you look through old photo albums, or if someone, if you put in all your photo albums to digital, that kind of thing, and you're looking through photo albums on your computer or on Google, that kind of thing, you'll notice that a faithful person, someone that's faithful in the things of helping people out, and like my grandpa was, always at every event, always helping everybody out, always there with his GMC Sierra, 1997 GMC Sierra with the faded green paint, always blasting Marty Robbins. He would be at every single event, to the point that actually, in all our family pictures, if you look in all our family pictures, Grandpa Jack, he is everywhere in our family's pictures. And maybe you have someone like that in your family's history. Someone came to mind that you go, that person is in every single one of our pictures. Or the opposite could be true. It's someone that really is faithful about keeping the family record. Someone automatically comes to mind out of my family that is not in any picture because they're the one taking all of them. You know anybody like that? They're constantly the one that's there. They're always there. Faithfulness to one's family. My grandpa Jack had faithfulness to his family before he became a Christian. He became a Christian way late in life. He actually became a Christian, he says, because I didn't understand why my grandpa, who I'm guessing as a little boy, 3 or 4 years old, you see this man that exudes all the fruits of the Spirit, but doesn't go to church. And it bothered me that my grandpa didn't go to church. And so every time we'd meet with them, I'd go, Grandpa, why don't you go to church? And apparently, my questioning after a while drove the guy so nuts that he finally went, you know what, I'm going to church. And he went to church, and he started meeting with my Uncle Rob, who was a pastor at the time. And he basically came to him and he said, hey, it was his son, why do I need to go to church? Why do I need Jesus? I'm not saying that Jesus is a bad thing. I'm just saying, aren't I a good person? Aren't I a good enough person? But what changed about my grandpa Jack with his faithfulness when he actually became a Christian is that now, instead of being faithful to just his family and being there for his family all the time, now he was there for everybody. Absolutely everybody. I can remember a story when the faithfulness was tested, really hard, was really tested. I have a cousin who is into some bad things, and he was currently going to go through this process of, he had been bailed out, he had gotten in trouble with the law, he had been bailed out, and he was currently needing a place to stay, and he couldn't stay with his parents. He couldn't go anywhere near his parents for reasons that I can't share right now, but he just needed a place to be, and it was either he would go back to his buddies, which weren't the best, or he would, be living on the street until his court date. You know who came out of the woodwork? My grandpa in his 1997 GMC Sierra blasting Marty Robbins. He took my cousin in. I won't tell you the crime that was committed or anything, in the background of the story. All I have to tell you is that it was egregious. It was terrible. And the rest of our family, myself included, kind of did this and went, that's his problem. He needs to deal with his problem. My grandpa, though, said, I'm not giving up on this young man. This young man needs some mentorship. He needs some help. And I'm going to be there for him. And he took him in. He gave him a place to be. But the thing is, my grandpa had these things he would do every year. For example, one of the things we would do every year is we'd go up in the woods and he'd get a permit and we'd go cut wood because he liked, he just heated his home with firewood. He had a stove. And he made my cousin go with him on every one of these trips. They went fishing. They went and collected wood. And he decided, he was very late in life, by the way, maybe, very, very close to his dementia actually starting to kick in. A few years later, we would notice some lapses and that kind of thing in Grandpa's judgment and things that he could remember and stuff like that. But Grandpa took a specific interest. He didn't say, you know what, this is a young man's problem. This is a young man's thing. I'm experiencing some health. I can't do this right now, God. He went, nope, God told me to take care of this young man, and he told me to witness to him, and that kid went to church. He was involved in the things of the church. My grandpa made sure that he was going to be a second dad to my misguided cousin. And folks, I can't tell you how much, knowing what my cousin did and knowing how much pain and heartache he caused my family, I can't tell you how much faith and how much patience and how much faithfulness it took for my grandpa to do that. But that was one of the last things before the dementia took over that my grandpa did. And it just, I can't fathom the depth of that man's connection to his God. Faithfulness, though, is something, like I said previously, that's forged. It's not necessarily something that just comes about, because faithfulness is a good thing to say things about. For example, I can say, I have so much faithfulness, when that thing breaks down or when this thing needs doing, you know what? Always call on me. I'll always be there for you. Those are great words to say, aren't they? And you probably heard those, maybe said them yourself. I've said some myself, and then not followed through. Faithfulness follows through. Faithfulness oftentimes actually goes unsaid. You don't need to say anything about it. Someone that's very faithful, they just react, right? A need comes up, and there they are. That's how my grandpa was. A need would come up, and boom, there he was. If a yard needed being put in, or something needed being fixed on a house, or it didn't matter what condition he was in, how he was feeling, how tired he was, he had some heart conditions, he would show up. And he was ready to help you in his 97 GMC Sierra blasting Marty Robbins. Seriously, he had like a CD that was like stuck in there, I think. And it was just this Marty, with a bigger iron on his hip, a bigger iron on. It was just like rolling down the road. That's all he would listen to. And he had every song memorized to the point that he would whistle along. So actually, to this day, if I hear that actual album from Marty Robbins, the whistle is in the background too, because my grandpa would whistle along with every single day. But he was always there for everybody who needed him. But let's go to the Bible in Mark 13:32. And this is when Jesus is telling his disciples, look, your faithfulness that you think you have is about to come under attack. In 32. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, only the Father. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge, each with their assigned task, and tells the one at the door to keep watch. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of that house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. And then, he goes through the Passover. Now, this is kind of a prequel to what's about to happen. The disciples are going to see a little mini-series of what the return is going to be like. He's, of course, talking about the return of Jesus. May Jesus catch you being faithful when he comes back. But Jesus then predicts Peter's own denial and faithlessness in 14:27. He says, you will all fall away, Jesus told them, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter declared, even if all fall away, I will not. The first person to speak is often the one whose faithfulness will get tested first and will fall away first. In Peter's case, unfortunately, it's him. In verse 30, it says, truly I tell you, Jesus answered, today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, even if I have to die with you, Jesus, I will never disown you. And all the others did the same. They went to a place then called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here and keep watch. Now, he says that Peter disowns him 3 times. He, of course, doesn't hold Peter to the standard that's about to happen. We, of course, know, and I won't go there today, what happens with Peter. Yes, Peter is asked later about who Jesus is. In fact, the lady comes up to him and says, hey, weren't you with Jesus of Nazareth? Don't you know him? And he goes, get away from me. I don't know him at all. And he does this 3 different times, emphatically, angrily, detests knowing Jesus, and then a rooster crows. But even before this happens, Jesus gives him a little task. He just says, okay, stand guard. Literally an example, a figurative example of what he was just talking about when the servant leaves us in charge of the ministry and says, keep watch. I'm coming back. I'm not going to tell you when I'm coming back, but I need you to work. I need you to be faithful. He puts them to the test. They were probably, I'm guessing when he told that story, they were going, yeah, that's right, and I'm going to stand right here. Well, Jesus is about to leave them and simply tell them to remain awake. Stay here and keep watch, he says. In verse 35, going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is so weak. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning a third time, he said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, the hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. I was listening to an interesting podcast this week by Barrett, and he was interviewing someone that had decided to go through Army Ranger School not once, but twice. The reason why this man wanted to go through Army Ranger School twice was that the first time he went through Army Ranger School, he recycled out of every course. Now, there's a few courses in Army Ranger School. For example, mountain phase, where you're in the mountains. Swamp phase, where they take you literally down to the swamps of Florida, and you have to go and train in the swamps of Florida. But you can recycle, which means fail at any point. If you don't get a pass in one of those phases, you have to repeat at least that phase, if not the entire course. And this guy, he said that he had been to Afghanistan. He was a decorated veteran, but he constantly, he wouldn't have dreams about those things. He actually woke up with nightmares about Army Ranger School, because to him, he had failed so many times the first time to actually pass the entire course. But he wanted to go back. And this was a Christian man, by the way. He wanted to go back. I forget his name. He wanted to go back because he said, you know what? Since I became a Christian, I realized that the thing I was missing when I went through Army Ranger School the first time is that I was in it for myself. And you can't pass Army Ranger School if you're in it for yourself. Most of the tests that you have to do actually involve you helping someone else. In fact, in every phase of Army Ranger School, apparently you get graded on how well you do by your peers. And the question isn't, hey, how well did this person do? It's, did you receive enough adequate help from this other person? Were they faithful to you? Or were they in it for themselves? Were they just trying to tread water? Were they going easy so that they could pass it? Or were they wanting to hold you up? So literally, you cannot pass Army Ranger School as a selfish person. And he went through it the second time as a journalist. Apparently they let people do that now, I don't know. But he went through it the second time as a journalist, and he realized that so many young men were in it for the same reasons as he was. One guy, he said, he interviewed, this guy had recycled every phase so many times that he had literally been at Army Ranger School for 250 days. Yeah. 250 days of putting yourself through limited food, limited sleep, always being on the move, always having to lift heavy objects, help your people out, that kind of thing. And the guy was at his wit's end. But he noticed, he was able to talk to this young man. He noticed that this young man was saying, oh, what can I do to be better at this? And he was in it for himself. And he said, the cool part of the interview is that he said he actually was able to witness to some of these guys and say, you know what? What if you had a faith that transcends this place? Because if you decide that you're done at any point in Army Ranger School, if you decide, you know what, I want a good night's sleep, I'd like to actually eat some food that's not from a bag, that kind of stuff. If you go home and say that, the phrase is that let 24 hours go by, and you will regret the decision you've just made for the rest of your life. Let 24 hours go by, and you will realize that you've let yourself down and everybody there that you could have helped down. He said, but what if you had a faith? What if you relied not on your own power, but on another power and a guy that can do so many great things through you by helping other people? And the obvious illustration to me when I was listening to this was, so that's kind of like tithing, right? Now, of course, we don't like to talk about money in church, right? So whenever a preacher talks about money, it's bad stuff. But I've dealt with the same kind of thing, trust me, where you're writing that check and you're thinking, oh my goodness, how are the lights staying on this month, God? But the funniest thing happens. You get some refund. One time, all of a sudden, I was going to reapply for my refund, apply for my added insurance with the school and that kind of thing. And I'm on the phone with them and everything and just reviewing my options. And they go, oh, yeah, hey, we really screwed up. There's a little benefit here. I had tithed approximately $375 that month. It was exactly $375 I was getting back because they had given me an option that I'd never used. Things like that. If you're faithful to God, He will be faithful to you. Faithfulness is rewarded, but it also is something that gets tested. So in the interest of keeping this short today, I want to go to our dangerous prayer of the week. And the reason we pray dangerous prayers, like I said last week and the week before, is because dangerous prayers aren't health, safety, food, shelter, amen, done, let's eat. These prayers take you into another realm. So if you've ever wanted to pray prayers that take you into another realm and you want to look back at some of those, I think they're all on YouTube. You can kind of skim to the end of my messages and look at some of them. My favorite one, of course, of weeks gone by is Know Me, See Me, and Know Me, God. Reveal everything that is not of you in my life, that it may be known to you. Now, I'm going back to the same psalm. It's Psalm 139, if you're following along. I'm going back to Psalm 139 because at the very end I noticed there's another prayer that's prayed. And because I don't like to cut things apart, I'm going to read you all of Psalm 139. At the end, though, is our prayer. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before you. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed down in the depths, you are there. If I rise on wings of dawn, and if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The light will shine like the day. For darkness is as light as you. The reason that I'm coming back to this, of course, is he's describing a God in this brilliant, figurative, wonderful language that is faithful in extremes. No matter, it's almost to the point of annoyance, right? The fact that Jesus and his reach and what he sees and what the Spirit sees through you never rests, never sleeps, can go anywhere. Even when you feel that all is lost, God is there. That is a faithful God, and that's one of the reasons I came back to this psalm. 13, for you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All my days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, Lord. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would number the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. If only, God, you would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you. I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, Lord, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in everlasting. In verse 23, it says this: search me, Lord, know my heart. That was one of the prayers that we prayed. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. If you are called upon to be faithful, as my grandpa was, and I never asked him about my cousin's situation. I never asked him, it wouldn't be appropriate to ask someone like that, why did you do that? Why did you care about this person so much? But I wonder if he had any anxiety about the situation. At any point, my cousin could have done something to destroy my grandpa's reputation, to take things he had perhaps, to mess up pretty much any part of his life. He welcomed this misguided boy back into his life to mentor him. And at any point, I wonder how much anxiety about this my grandpa had. If you are called upon, though, to be faithful, there's going to be some anxiety, because faithfulness means always being there. What if you're called upon and there's something that could go wrong, or there's something that you're missing, or it's too much to give, God? It's too much. This would drain my finances if I did this. This would upset my house if I did this. If this goes wrong, God, do you understand what could possibly happen? Faithfulness is tested when there's no guardrail. Test me, Lord, and know my anxious thoughts. And the cool thing is that at the end it says, see if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. If you begin to be a faithful person toward God, if you're faithful even in the small things, it's not that you're doing it, it's that God is leading you. And when there's no guardrail, I'd rather have God holding on to me than anybody. Let's pray. Lord, would you test us? Would you test our hearts? Would you test the daily thoughts that we have? And would you know all of the things that bring us anxiety, God? All the things that are standing in our way of being a faithful person toward you, God. May you make us faithful so that when you come, you may say, well done, my good and faithful servants. Amen.